Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Thoughtful Advocate. I'm your host, Elizabeth Teo, and we all want to change the world, but most of us don't know where to start. So I'm sitting down with a thoughtful advocate, the people turning hope into action. And today's thoughtful advocate is Isaiah Hernandez. He's an amazing environmentalist and storyteller. He has over 123,000 followers on Instagram. Oh my God. Very close to 60K on TikTok. And he's been featured in Vogue, New York Times, Harvard Business Review, and just so much more. And overall, just an outstanding person. So welcome, Isaiah. Thank you so much for joining us today. Very exciting. So basically, we're going to start off with this segment called Show and Tell. And it's just like when you were in elementary school and you're forced up on the stage. But hopefully this will be a little less intimidating. Isaiah, do you want to just take it away and just show us the item that's meaningful to you?
Yeah, so the item that I brought today is an open air terrarium. Hard to say. Basically, I actually made it 2 years ago. We had only a few months. The plants were not big, like they were very small. And yeah, I've been growing for the last 2 years through solar light, and it's been really great to see it bloom. Like the flowers are really beautiful. And so I think for me, it represents like how much diversity can just exist in a small container of a glass. And I think that allows me to also reimagine the ways that I can think about green spaces in my life.
That's amazing. And it's amazing that you kept it alive for that long. I think I had an air plant in a little container and it pretty much died.
Yeah, they're really
the
hard to
next week.
maintain. They are hard.
Yeah, you have to
They're
keep
not
like
easy.
spraying it. I'm not good with high maintenance plants. I'm in the low light, the low maintenance
Yeah.
ones. But that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Isaiah. And send me a picture so I can get a clearer look
Yes.
at it. Okay, so I've been looking through our DMs, and so apparently we've been chatting since 2020. I feel like that was like the time where things were coming together. And I feel like Clubhouse like really brought a lot of people like closer together because we could hear each other's voices, and it was kind of like the first time we were like in a room with all these other environmentalists, and that was really cool too. So we're gonna start. The adventure begins here with Isaiah's story. So Isaiah, from growing up in LA, which you moved back to, and experiencing environmental injustice to becoming a globally recognized climate educator, what moment in this journey still gives you chills? I'm sure there's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I love this question. I think there's so much experiences, I think, as humans, like we go through. And I think it's funny because I'm in my late 20s now, but when I was my early 20s, I thought I was an adult. I was like, I'm mature and I'm an adult. And I think some of those chilling experiences with environmentalism is honestly just as I'm writing a book, is really documenting like how we have deprogressed in society when it comes to certain things and how much things are pretty much worse for younger generations. As much as we complain about our generation too, like it was bad for us, it's worse for the younger people. And I think what it gives me chills is the fact of like how much disinvestment's happening with education and literacy for young people. And I think that really worries me because I think for me, that's what got me curious about environmentalism. And I think in a field that's already very limited, very financially strained, it's not a very profitable career doing environmental work unless you're higher up at a foundation. I think it just kind of shows the stark contractions of where we're headed towards and how much like a lot of us sometimes are in our own bubbles or like our own, it's more of an industry than a movement. And so I think for me, I've been really reckoning while writing this book, how do we validate all of these people, but also recognize that things are just unfair for young people? And like, how do we think about as we're aging in this space to give back? And I think that's one of my chills is I'm already under resourced and they're expecting me to continue to inspire people. But no, everyone wants people to inspire them, but nobody wants to invest in them. And I think that's really the frustrating part of seeing how much I've been able to build for free and open access to my community, but at the same time, how much I've had to invest personally myself to do this.
Oh yeah, it takes a lot of time, effort, and emotional labor as well. And having a son too, like I gave birth this year, I have been thinking so hard about the future it does look pretty bleak. I keep seeing, I follow a bunch of national parks, like Facebook pages, they go off.
Oh yeah,
Which
they're
I love.
committed on there, yeah.
But they keep saying they're getting their funding cut. And I heard the EPA was also getting a lot of stuff cut, which is disheartening because a lot of resources and information does come from those places. It is difficult being in this space when it's mostly the environmental tech spaces that are mostly being invested in. And when we're in these artistic creator spaces, it's seen as less than or maybe not as important for climate change, which I beg to differ because we do need that education portion and that inspiration for young children who need to have that hope. There's still hope left because a lot of
Yeah.
people, when I talk to a lot of the younger generation, they often say, I'll just spend all my money now. What's the point of saving for the future when there is no future? And that's just heartbreaking.
So yeah,
So
yeah.
I can totally see it. And I think if we can work together and work with them as well, we can have a better future. But yeah, it's definitely going to take a lot of who's in power right now and just so much going on. But I know we'll get there. So thank you for that. I think that really brought us to reality. Let's go into what you're working on now. So I know you're writing a book. Do you want to share the title? Or is that not out?
So I'm working on my first debut book called Dear Environmentalist. And actually, I came up with the title Dear Environmentalist when I was re-editing the book proposal and I was watching Bridgerton on Netflix.
Oh my
And it was
gosh.
fun. And it was funny because Lady Whistledown would be like, dearest gentle reader. And then when I
Yes.
thought about the book, I was like, this book is really representative of my late teenage, early college years. So like, I'm thinking about how it's going to be read by high schoolers and college students, and of course adults too. But I wanted it to be endearing. Like I wanted it to be a mix of both cultural analysis of what's happening now, but also a personal experiences, not to memoir, but some personal experiences through an environmental lens that help connect the broader issue. Because I think that a lot of the times we can learn about all the problems and we can become experts at identifying the problems and say capitalism this, capitalism that. But I think that a lot of the times people love to hear the personal story and how it connects to the larger story. Because I think when we hear those stories, it also activates our senses to be like, oh, I've also experienced something similar, tangential. Let me look into it. Dear Environmentalist is really a primer that looks into different fields of subjects that I've written about, from food, energy, democracy, like veganism, mental health, climate, literacy, education. And it goes into these different fields, and we're unpacking the question of what's happening in the state of these fields, but what are some of the concerns of these industries that where we're headed. One of them I'm writing right now is on like the new forms of environmental racism and data centers, which I think AI and data centers are very popular. But I actually learned recently that, like, for example, in the book, the United States has the highest amount of data centers, and all the other countries have less than 1,000. We have around 5,400 data centers, which is insane. And also they're being built in typically places that have more access to fresh water resources. So a lot of like venture capitalists or private equity firms, I should say, have been trying to acquire land or natural resources. And so it goes into this not dystopian future, but this is going to become a much bigger issue for the next generation of young people. And we have to talk about it more and bring it up to the main discussions on that end. So really excited for it, but it's like a example of my old content when I used to do the What Is series on infographics, like what is climate change? What is climate? So it's like taking a more deeper poke at everything. And I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it, I'm really excited for it.
I love that. I'm so excited for that too. And yeah, I did not know that about data centers. So that's something I already learned without even reading the books from you. That, yeah, that's crazy. They're definitely, I've also been getting like researching into AI, and obviously it takes a lot of water and energy, but apparently they're coming up with ways to make it more efficient. So I think with these data centers, there has to be a way in the future where they like make them smaller, compact them, or just so that they don't take up so much space and resources, because yeah,
Exactly.
definitely becoming an issue. That's exciting. So I know we talked about your books. So is that your most hype project, would you say, for you right now? Between your content creation, I know you had some symbiosine events as well and public speaking, and you're doing a bunch of other work as well. I don't know how you do it all, but is
Yeah,
that what makes you most excited?
yeah, I think my environmental career I have today, it's such a diverse career where I have different roles. And unfortunately, we have to diversify our incomes as freelancers because I think that's just the reality of how we make money. But on one unfold, the other projects that I'm working on while trying to write this book, which is very difficult to manage when you're trying to also survive in this economy, is an events production company that's co-owned by my co-founder, Kalpana. Arias. It's called the symbiocene. The symbiocene is a term that was coined by Glenn Albrecht. It's an environmental philosopher to basically talk about a period of time that is the reintegrations of humans with nature. And it kind of battles against this narrative around the Anthropocene. Because when we think about Anthropocene, we think about human induced actions that have caused the acceleration of biodiversity death. But in reality, we know that a lot of industries are the ones polluting it. And so instant biasing looks at it from a more, like you said, thoughtful, optimistic lens. And so I actually produce events too on the side. So we've done a summit in London. We've done some events in London. We're doing our third Climate Week New York City event. And the point of symbiosing is bringing in different, not just environmentalists, but designers, writers, poets, financial, tech, like energy, different types of people in different industries to come together to have very much artful, thoughtful dialogues, and not so much about the whataboutism or trying to find common ground, but rather different theories of change that can exist in different dimensions of the world, even if you don't agree. I think that a lot of times we feel disconnected. We feel like there's not really a climate event that's really for us. And so when I created Symbioscene, I really wanted it to be artistic. I wanted it to be creative, which I think is true to the branding that we've designed today, is that it is a very creative premier event. And we try to work with the most ethical funders, and it's grassroots. Like we're not funded by large philanthropies or like corporations. We really have been working very slowly with our own sponsors to build this out and also pay people. We believe that paying people in local talent is essential. And so that's been something where it's been really great. And then the other project I'm working on is my web series called Teaching Climate Together, which is on YouTube. That is a more like independent media project where I explore different terminologies with different scholars and activists and thought leaders. And they actually show me about what their work looks like. And so we're shooting season 2 right now this year, and we have one of our episodes finally coming out. And it's really amazing to see that a lot of times people talk about, oh, I want a TV show. Oh, I want to do this. And I think for me, I was just like, you know what? Nat Geo, Discovery, PBS are not going to knock on my door. I know I'm not experienced as a host yet. I'm still learning about my skill sets. I'm not where I'm at in my career. But right now I'm young and full of energy, and I could take advantage of my health and everything. So just create things that are for free. And it's just been amazing to see that web series actually be very strong with a lot of climate educators and teachers, because I get messages from high school teachers being like, I had to show your video because there's not really that much climate media content, and yours is like the closest I can get to being something produced in some way. So it was really amazing to just, how much the series has evolved. And even if it doesn't get like thousands of views, I always believe that my work has been rooted in like legacy than virality, because I think virality is always unsustainable. And what really sustains ourselves is always legacy of people who have stood against time. And I do think that I'm really privileged that my work even today is very in demand, even though it's been like, I don't know, 6, 7 years since I created my account. And I just can't think that was a long time ago.
No, that's amazing. And I love that teachers are reaching out to you. That just shows how important your work is. And I feel like as creators, that definitely motivates us. That, yeah, it's so important because there isn't spaces or shows like that. I know other creators are trying to make their own travel shows, documentaries, because, yeah, if there's no seat at the table, just make your own table. And I think that's what a lot of us are doing. And I think that's so amazing and inspiring. So thank you for that, Isaiah. And yeah, definitely keep going with that. Okay, let's go into your origin story. We'll touch a bit on your cultural influences. How do you think being Mexican and growing up in LA has shaped your approach to environmental justice? Do you think that it changes it? And what traditions, if you have any, keep you grounded?
Yeah, I'm very privileged to have grown up in a Mexican American household. My parents are obviously from Mexico, but one of the things my parents taught me as like a child of immigrants is always remembering where the land you came from, and also never to be ashamed to speak, even though Spanish is a colonized language, to be bilingual. And I'm very privileged that my parents never attempted to whitewash me in a ways of contributing to the cultural whiteness in America. I think my parents were always very adamant of, yes, you wear your identity very proud. These are the rich dishes that you love to consume. These are our experiences and our oral stories. Like to even find out from my parents' side, one of them, even their own ancestors documenting genocide, like in writing, to recognize that I come from a lineage of people who survived colonization and survived genocide, survived the growth of Western religions like Catholicism that was very tainted by obviously Spanish settlers. And I think to me, it's been very powerful to tap into that because at the end of the day, often when I hear environmentalists, a lot of the times people think associated with the white person. And I think when I ask someone like, can you name 5 Black environmentalists, 5 Indigenous environmentalists, 5 Latino, 5 Asian environmentalists? People are just are like maybe 1 or 2, but everyone can be like, oh yeah, Jane Goodall, David Attenborough, Greta Thunberg, like, and they're amazing people. Do not get me wrong. I just think that like in our cultural consumption of media, we have really asserted ourselves to default whiteness as the best form of some. And so I think for me, growing up for me was very rough because as much as I love my parents, and of course they weren't perfect either, but I think that it was very hard for them to also raise a kid who was going to be queer. And I think that was something that they were not really prepared for. And I think that even though they tried to make me conform into certain societal standards, like via religion and Catholicism, it never worked for me because they always knew I was a troublemaker and I was someone that always questioned power structures. That I think that my pursuit for justice also came from them because my parents were always people who always gave. And I don't know if this is the immigrant parent thing, but my parents always gave. They always gave to people even if they didn't have anything. And they always reminded me, like, you're not losing anything by giving to someone, even though it was a weird dichotomy because it's you weren't the best parent to me growing up as a kid. But at the same time, you did give me forms of love that obviously I nourish and I value. But I think for me, it was always like my parents did a really good job raising me to be justice oriented. And I think that was something that is so powerful because at the end of the day, when I walk into rooms and have said so many experiences in environmental spaces where a white colleague who doesn't have a degree in environmental sciences, doesn't have those lived experiences of facing injustice, will always be seen as more of a professional. And I always be deemed as an influencer with no experience, even though I've studied environmental science. I was in research. I was a scientist. I did all these lived experiences. So for me, my Mexican identity will come first because I will always be seen as a brown person out of that door. And I know in the world of this industry that we're in, how much we still value whiteness. And so I think for a lot of Mexicans in my mission for environmentalism and Latinos in general is to always remind them that you are more than just an accolade and a title. If anything, your unique experiences with the land, even if it was in poverty that your parents had to grow up in, had more rich ecological knowledge than people our generation. Even people like me, my parents are more environmentalists and more sustainable than I am. And that's just the truth that I don't think a lot of us want to acknowledge. Like, I'm only doing this career in education because my parents essentially gave up on their dreams, not to say that they wanted to, but because they live in a system that deems them as other and deems them as not important because of their status. I had to show up and be like, no, I'm going to do this not just for my family, but for all the Latinos who have felt not smart enough in predominantly white institutions who have been devalued, that I will be the person to help represent, but also to mentor the next generation. Because the point of doing this work in my environmental work is so younger people don't need to suffer the ways I suffered in those spaces. And to me, I think that is really the greatest threat that uniformity and white supremacy in this world has against us is like they can't stand that. And I think that's where we're living in a time where we're so politically divided, but at the same time, we have to stand together with diversity to fight against those methods. And I think that's where it's important for me to, even if I stand alone sometimes, to be there because it's like I will have to face this myself. But I know that I'll open the pathway for so many people that are trying to be in this industry.
I think that's amazing and so powerful. Being a trailblazer, especially in a creative field, being a person of color, you face so many barriers and obstacles that you are paving a path for generations to come. So I think that's amazing. I can definitely relate because my parents were definitely, my grandparents especially, they were definitely more environmentalists than I was. Reusing every little thing they had. They wash every single plastic bag. And whether that was out of scarcity or how they grew up, I think that there's so much value for that. And Isaiah, do you have a hard stop at 11:30 just so that I can go through?
I'll have a few minutes, like 10 minutes after, yeah.
Okay, okay, great. Okay, that was very powerful. I love that. I'm gonna clip that whole segment right there. Okay, so we did touch a bit on this. I know you talked about your relationship, a bit about your relationship with your parents and not really accepting you being gay. I believe this is what you wrote on your website. I was reading through this. You wrote about your father not letting you wear purple or skinny jeans because they were too gay. How did those early restrictions shape your relationship with authenticity? And I love the skinny jeans era. So
Yeah, no,
iconic.
I know the skinny jeans are now canceled, which is great. I always had baggy jeans growing up. I think my parents really were really the way that my siblings were treated based on their status to heteronormativity. And of course, the differences too, like women being treated in my family versus men, like a lot of misogyny and sexism there. So dismantle the patriarchy first. But also, I think with my relationship with my family, I think was really rough in my early years because I was always someone who really saw the world through like a different lens. And like I saw queerness as very expansionary. I remember even I told people like I have dated women in the past. Like I identified bisexual at one point and then I was like gay, but now I'm like, I think I'm more queer. I see like different forms of love that exist with different people, but obviously I don't really care if people call me gay or not. Like it's to me, it's like whatever. But I think for me, my dad really enforced these types of norms because I think in a way he also realized that the ways that LGBTQ communities were being treated, and not to say that justifies his behaviors, but I remember very clearly how stricter he was for me and the ways that I wore. And I think in a way, like, it's not even that like I wanted to wear that because everyone was wearing that. I think I wanted to explore different fashion senses. And in a way, because I was so constrained in what I could wear growing up, I had to be very creative in the ways that I styled myself through, I guess you would say, like a heteronormative presenting lens. And I think that was really powerful to see that because I think for me, I recognize that I could make this situation and become a victim or I can also recognize that I am a victim, but I'm also going to find solutions now. And I remember like fashion was a really gateway for me to explore myself. Like I remember even in college, like that's when I had more full freedom. My friends would always be like, "You're so fashionably dressed." People tell me like, "You're literally the most stylish person in this house. I always look up to you." And I'm just like, that is insane. But I also think that in a way, like my queerness being suppressed also devalued my relationship with the environment because I think I was so in a state of trying to understand who I was. I also felt this great disconnection with what my true purpose in life was trying to do. And so, in a way, I saw environmentalism also as a gateway for freedom because I felt like the only people I could truly talk to about my queerness when I was very young as a kid was like animals, the plants, and the trees. And people may call that crazy, but when you're growing up poor, you have no access to mental health resources. Your siblings are straight and your family's straight and your friends at school is straight. You really don't know how to. This is back in the late 2000s, 2010s, early 2010s, and there's still homophobia that exists today. But I think for me, I had to find different alternative routes to save myself. And I'm very privileged that I figured out who I was at a very early age. I think by 13, I knew who I was becoming, which is such a rare occasion because I have friends who are barely coming out now, which everyone's on a journey. There's no like shame and delay. But I think for me, it's been something where queerness is actually an extension of my environmental work because protecting trans and LGBTQ communities is protecting the environment. And you cannot really separate that truth from it. I recognize that my parents saw someone who wasn't just rebellious, but someone who was really self-defining themselves that now we have a really like close relationship. My parents follow me on social media. We all have a group chat. Like they see my stories. And it's very heartwarming because I think that like I was at a point in my life where we had a very fragmented relationship many years ago during college, but I chose to repair it. I chose to obviously re-traumatize myself in some spaces, but in a way, I feel this freedom from that family pain that I had growing up. And of course, it never goes away. I think you just expand your capacity for grief. But I think there's this freedom that I feel now where it's like almost like a chapter of that experience is closed. And so for me, I look at it of like, how do I get back to LGBTQ communities now? And so I feel like it's always a journey, and it's something where I think my identity is also that part of my identity is also essential, because at the end of the day, it's like, you're not just brown, you're also queer. So it's like you have this other layer to yourself, which is sometimes it is very difficult to navigate, because it's like you see not that many LGBTQ environmentalists, but LGBTQ environmentalists who are black and brown in that environmental space. So you're just like, yeah, there's very few of us here.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So I'm sorry you went through all of that, but I definitely think it definitely built your character. And as for parents, yeah, even in my own family, I feel like a lot of parents say, I don't want my kids to be different, whether that's a mental disability, any kind of other disability, being queer, standing out in any way because they know growing up that would get you bullied. So obviously it comes from a very protective place, but because of that protection and wanting to overprotect your child, it restricts them from their creative freedoms, and I think creates a lot of resentment as well.
Absolutely.
You definitely had a lot of strength to go through that. So we'll jump to the journey here. I believe I was reading that you lost your job during the pandemic, but you kept your platform. When did you know that this could sustain you full time?
Yeah, so I created Queer Brown Vegan, the environmental media platform, in September 2019. I launched it while I was working my job, and I remember just reminding myself like how I hated my job in the creative agency. I was just so drained. I was always working, and I told myself, look, I have a 9 to 5. I have this business adult life now. But I was like, is that all that life is meant to happen? Is that all that I'm supposed to do in my life? It's just work a 9 to 5. And I had this very like large breakdown in the subway in New York. And I was only 22 or 23 at the time. I was so young, and I broke down. I was like, I hate my life. I don't have any friends in New York. I don't have any career prospects. I don't know if I made the right decision if I moved to New York. I was 3 months in. And then lovingly, my ex-boyfriend at the time was really supportive during that journey. And I very thank him for that, because I feel like if I didn't have an anchor with me during that time, I don't know how I would have, like, in some way, it's like people are meant in your life for certain reasons. And I remember just when I created Queer Brown Vegan, I just said, even my friends would say this, you're so good at talking about environmental issues, just create an account. And so when I created it, and it started growing very slowly, and 2020, I think it started to pick up. I remember just like thinking one day, because I had gone and let go of my job due to budget cuts. And then I was like, I remember clearly going to the unemployment office in Flushing, New York. I remember there was a lot of young people there, and this young person was freaking out. I'm so embarrassed to be here. I'm filing for unemployment. And I was just like, it's free money. Who gives a F? Like, we need a break from society. I was 23 by that time, and I was just like, who cares? Yeah, and this is before the pandemic was announced. So I was like, I'm gonna apply and then do the thing. And then I ended up on unemployment for a month, and I got a part-time job remote. So I was like, okay, I can cut some unemployment benefits. But I remember like when I was growing the platform and I hit maybe 5 or 6K, someone asked me like, what are your goals for your project? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe it'll be my job. I think it was near the end of 2020, during the fall of 2020, after the pandemic was happening and my platform grew to 30 or 40,000. I was like, maybe this could be my career. Like, I started doing some ads, and I was like, okay, like doing some speaking gigs, like, okay, there's something there. And I then went the full jump in 2021 when I moved back to LA, because I moved back to New Jersey because during the pandemic, when it was announced, I went to LA for a speaking gig that got canceled, and then the pandemic got announced. So I stayed in LA for 6 months, which is crazy. So I had my lease in New York, so I had to go back, fly on a plane without any vaccine during that time.
Oh,
Insane.
geez.
And I did that for love, because I wanted to be back with my partner. Insane public health, not recommended move, but I did mask and everything. And I don't know, I just think that like I told myself, look, I looked at my bank account and I said, look, you have $10,000 in your bank account. You don't have no generational wealth. And I told myself, you have a college degree. Your rent is going to be $1,000. Like, if anything goes bad, you could always get a full-time job. You have at least 5 to 6 months of rent down and some food. So I said, all right, I'm going to go freelance. And then honestly, I just got so lucky. Like I found a manager that later that month, I got signed by an agency. I started doing ads. I just worked so much. And I think you remember this, Elizabeth, because we were in the Clubhouse era. Like we were nonstop posting.
Oh my
Us too. We were
God. Yeah.
always on social media posting like nonstop.
That was my life.
And it was unhealthy. And I
Yeah.
recognized that too. But I was like, I have to do this to get to the next level. Looking back, I look at some of the old videos and photos of some of the eco-friendly videos I did. I love that era. I own every era I did, but I knew
Yes.
that my long-term goal was like, this is going to be my full-time job. I will write a book. Like I'm going towards that trajectory. So I said, I don't care what people think about me right now.
Hey.
'Cause I'll get there. It's been my full-time job since 2021, but it's a privilege. I got lucky this year with the recession, but again, like nothing is ever guaranteed. So I've had to really be strategic of diversifying income. It's like I don't want to always rely on ads. I want to do speaking. I want to do consulting. So I think for any entrepreneurs out there, young people doing it, I think there's always this risk that you have to take that's going to look non-traditional. But at the same time, like you should applaud yourself if you do it, or even if you return not doing it and you get a full-time job or part-time job, there's nothing shameful about that. Everyone has different chapters of life. Even I told myself, I don't know, in my mid-30s, I want to have kids. I want to be married. I don't know if I want to be traveling the world because I have my kids now. I'm no longer 23-year-old Isaiah where I can just leave and do whatever I want. I'm an adult. So I think there's been a lot of things where things have shifted for me, but it's been such a privilege to do this full time and have people who have worked for me for years during that time.
Yeah, that's amazing. And look at you now. You're writing your book. You said in 2021, hey, I'm going to do this full time, write my book. And you manifested that for yourself. So you should be proud. And
Thank-
okay, we're going to jump to navigating storms. So you made some hard choices in your life. And you recently wrote about declining Berkeley's master's program after being accepted, even though this was a childhood dream. What did that decision teach you about choosing your own path over external validation?
Oh, I love this question. So when I was accepted this year to my master's in climate solutions, it was really jaw-dropping to me because I had a lot of academic trauma in undergrad from 2014 to 2018. And it took me years to realize, like, how can I have this love for academia, but also distaste of what academia did to me? I will admit, I am not someone who is academically intelligent. Like, the way of my intelligence works is very different. And not to say I don't know how to perform in those spaces, because I do, but I remember just having such a hard time catching up and recognizing, oh yeah, you did not study that well, or you need better studying habits. You need to improve the way that you write and how you read, how you research, how you think about things. And so I think what helped me like overcome after I graduated in undergrad and when I applied to grad school, I think I did it for two reasons. One was that I really did miss higher education and I feel like there was a lot that I can learn. But the second was very much like also a dream for my younger self, where I remember I was so broke and I'm not sad saying this, but I remember just telling myself, like, you're going to apply no matter what. No matter what this world does to you, don't give up on that dream because you always wanted that. And so when I applied, it was very hard for me because I kept thinking about my GPA. I was just like 2.8, like all the grad school programs are 3.0 higher. And I was just like, I don't know if I'm like smart enough to get it here because of my GPA, even though like I had really strong recommendations. I have a portfolio of extensive environmental work and advocacy work that I've done myself. But I still, in a way, valued academics so high that I was like, my GPA is really what's going to destroy me here. And I think getting in was really great, but rejecting the offer was looking at my reality of my life now, is that I think younger Isaiah wanted to go to grad school. I think older Isaiah right now doesn't want to go to higher education because of our state of democracy, but also like I don't have the financial security and I think finance is the big thing for a lot of young people going to higher education. Like I can't afford to take a cut in my income when I'm supporting my family and I'm supporting myself. The third of it is that my illness, I had to be honest with myself. Like I don't have anyone in terms of, I do have my family and my best friends and siblings, but I don't have someone to lay on. Like, I don't have there's a difference when you have a romantic partner to be able to ground things in reality. Like, I don't have that support system. And I don't know if I put myself in academia while trying to do queer, brown, vegan, I don't think that would be sustainable for my health. I would have started this week, actually. This
Oh,
week is when the
dang.
program would have started. And I think there's this deep sense of like grief that I have, but at the same time, rejecting it was this sense of a closure of maybe you will go to grad school, but not now. And your chapter has been rewritten because you worked so hard to create a new chapter for yourself, even when people told you it wasn't possible. Like, even I had professors that are teaching those classes told me that the career I wanted in 2018 was not possible. And now and that goes to show like nobody really truly knows what the future is going to look like. And so what I always say is, yes, take those risks when you can. I think when you get older, you become more careful because you have a family, you
Yeah,
need to
more
be smart.
fear.
When you're young, you're like, who cares? Let's do it. And I'm glad I
Yeah.
did that during that era because I did lose a lot. But I do think that rejecting grad school was really hard for me. It wasn't an easy decision, but I think when I came to the reality, I was just like, why give up the life that you are comfortable, in some way comfortable? You still struggle, but why would you give it up to suffer again? And I was just like, no. Like, I'm not doing that again. I'm not going to repeat the mistakes that younger Isaiahs did, jumping into things without really assessing. And that's when my heart was like, at the same time, I got my book deal the next month. I remember I got rejected from my book deal 2 times. The third time is when I got it. And I said, I've been wanting this since 2021 when I got signed by a literary agency. I was like, no, I have to write this book. This is what it's meant for. And so I think it was really serendipitous where I feel like the universe told me that it was ready to present me because I think I was ready to prepare myself for these 2 opportunities. But at the same time, it was just like choose wisely. And I think I did choose the best decision for myself to write this book.
Yeah, I think so. You gave up on your childhood dream in a way, but I feel like you've definitely evolved and your dreams changed. They really do.
Yeah.
And I think you made the right decision. So jump to the treasure. I know we touched upon it earlier, but I want you to dive a bit deeper into this. I saw this example. I love how seahorses, like the dads are the ones who give birth. And it's not, and I think it just shows we're not meant to be contained in one box. How do you think understanding queer ecology changes the way we approach environmentalism and identity?
I love this question. So I think queer ecology basically looks at the ways that we see the natural world as normal or natural or unnatural. And it really challenges these power structures that have come from a heteronormative society and culture that has deemed species or deemed humans as unnatural, especially towards LGBTQ behaviors. So when I talk about the non-human world, I'm talking about plants, fungi, animals, and the non-human world is a very great example that a lot of our human society can use as parallels, as metaphorical examples. Not to say that like we are the same, obviously, experiences, but how animal kingdoms really seek to diversify, then constrain themselves in uniformity. And research has shown, and this is actually decades of research, is that same-sex behavior in animals has always existed, even with fungi having like thousands of sex in them in certain species, or even plants having asexual reproduction or transforming their structures or having both structures of female and male in the biological sense, which is also like very needs to be challenged. But I would say that in my view of looking at queer ecology in the world is that a lot of the times researchers tried to dismay that this type of same-sex behavior was something that was not normal or that they deleted it, they erased it from history. And so I think that when you look at human societies, for example, homophobia and transphobia exist in our specific kingdom because they are existent on socio-cultural norms. Non-human species, not to say that they don't adhere to that culture, they have their own cultures, but their cultures aren't rooted in transphobia, homophobia, in the killing of same-sex species. And so it makes us question, like, what were these power structures in society and human nature were created? And when you look at the colonization, religion, right? Religion didn't just oppress minorities. It oppressed women, it repressed trans people, queer people. It repressed or suppressed people who challenge their type of ideology. And through colonization, we start to see the example that heteronormativity, whether that was in media, arts, culture, film, was the epiphany of what every society should be and what a healthy society actually looks like. When in reality, queer and trans communities have always existed in indigenous cultures. If you look at different indigenous languages, they have different terms for third gender people or different genders of people, or even that gender doesn't even exist. It's just the embodiments of who you are is what makes you the person. And so I think for queer ecology, a lot of the times people resonate with the non-human world because there's this sense of questioning that different species do. Like clownfish, for example, have unique reproductive strategies that don't adhere to this heteronormative science model that are able to transform themselves. And of course, I'm not going to say it's the same experience as trans people transitioning. However, trans people using it as a metaphor to explain this type of element of nature that's also them, but this element of non-human world to reflect kind of their realities. And I think for me, it was a non-human world that helped me understand more of my queerness because I couldn't really talk about it publicly. But as a researcher and a scientist, when I first learned about queer ecology in a wildlife ecology course, I remember just being shocked. I was like, what do you mean that animals have polyamorous relationships? I thought that just existed in San Francisco. It was very much like different types of like experiences. So queer ecology allows us to really challenge that binary and allow us to expand that mindset.
Yeah, that's amazing. We can learn so much from nature, and that's something I never really explored that I think it just goes to show like we need to be more open-minded because we can't just conform to our current beliefs and thinking when nature is just so complex. So yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so we're setting sail here and we're going to talk about your future. So what do you think is next for you, Isaiah? The next evolution, the queer brown vegan? Are you thinking bigger platforms, different mediums? I know you're reading a book. That's a big one. Have you thought about it or are you just going with the flow?
Yeah, I think once I'm done with these larger projects, I do want to go into script writing. I want to first do a video game on sustainability and climate.
Oh,
I want to work with developers. I don't know how to code, but I have a storyline. I'm great at stories. So I was like, okay, I think I know how to develop something. I also want to
yeah.
explore very creative projects that I feel like I haven't had time to ever do. Go back to content creation. Also, I'm just going to put it out there. I want to be a father. I want to be married. I want to fall in love again.
Yes.
Honestly, I've taken so much time to really not focus on my romantic life. And I recognize that these years that I was by myself, which I really needed, I don't think I would have been the best partner to support a loved one during the building of my career. Now that's going to be more established. I want to do that. I want to raise a family. By my mid-30s, I want to adopt kids. And it's like, I do want to be a father. I tell people straight up, like, I want to be dad. I always wanted to be. And even if that doesn't look traditionally in a relationship, I want to figure out what that looks like. And I think getting these larger projects completed allows me to open to new opportunities for myself. And also, I'll be touring once the book is out in 2027. So I'll be busy just traveling the States for a bit. So I think for me, there's a lot of things I always want to create. I feel like a kid where it's like I'm always trying to innovate and create new things. And so I don't know where the brand will go, but I always tell people that I will always be here. I think I've evolved in different stages. And I think you've seen that too with our lives too, how we've evolved together. It's like we become such different people, but I think our hearts for environmentalism and advocacy and optimism will always be there.
Definitely. And yeah, I think I love that you're not just looking at your career, but your life too, because I think that's so important. And obviously, the person who chooses you or you choose them, I guess both. Yeah, that's going to be a lifetime. So I'm so excited for you. And
Thank you.
I think you're going to be a great dad. Your children are going to learn a lot. Oh my gosh. That's
I'll ask
so.
you for parenting tips though. I'm like,
Yeah,
please help.
I'll see what I can do.
Be like, Elizabeth,
Uh,
help me.
how many kids do you want? Do you know?
Yeah, I wanted 4, but my parents were like, in
Oh
this
my
economy,
God.
and I was like, well,
Yes.
what if I make? I think 2 is like twins.
Okay. Yeah.
I think,
I feel like
yeah,
that's like the average number now.
3 would be a
Oh.
lot, but I'd be down for 3 if I'm in a better economic situation. But I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
adopt the third one like maybe a few years after, so it's like
Oh.
a separation for everyone.
Yeah. They can also help you. Like the older ones can help you look after the.
Yeah, I'm like, it's your turn to look.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So for someone just discovering your work, what's the first step you'd like them to take beyond hitting a follow?
I want them to be curious and find out what specific type of value they're interested in. I think my platform brings so many unique and crazy people, like not the vegans, I love the vegans, but like I feel like I bring such a diverse array of people. Like I bring the philosophers, I bring the people in spirituality, I bring the people in policy, I bring the people in like food and energy and tech. Like I think a lot of people follow me because they're just like his content's so like out there that there's something for everyone, which is the downside
Yeah.
too, because you're like want to be specific. But I feel like education's always the main thing where it's I want to educate you. So I think that there's this telling the person like to digest the content rather than trying to consume it as quickly as possible.
That's awesome. No, you bring everyone together. I think that's amazing. And so it's so needed now. Okay, this is a big legacy question. You don't have to have all the answers. When you think of the next generation of queer, BIPOC environmentalists, like looking back at your work, what do you hope they say you made possible?
Oof. I hope that they look at it and they could just be like, I've been able to build my own career and financial stability because of the blueprint that he left behind or how to think about things. Like to me, it's I really care about the financial well-being of communities. And for me to also acknowledge that as a creative myself, support the next generation of artists because no, like I didn't know how I was gonna make it. And so I hope they can just be like, the fact that he was so smart to do all these things is like I did leave all the blueprint there. Like I did not do any backdoor deals. It was just like I built it from scratch. If I can do it, I hope you can do it too. But of course, they can hopefully see my content as mentorship too. This is what he left behind. Because I know that those videos will always exist, and I hope they don't look at my eco-friendly videos. But then maybe we could be like, he was in that era, but it's fine because you know how we make fun of the millennials from the zero waste
Yeah.
era. They'll make fun of our era too, so it's
Yeah.
fine. We'll figure it out when that
Every
happens.
generation does it. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's awesome. I think, yeah, definitely as content creators become more of a, I guess as more people go into content creation, because they are currently, it's becoming like more people are saying they want to be YouTubers, influencers. Like I think, yeah, especially in the space, knowing how to navigate that space and how to get your different forms of financial support is so important. So yeah,
yeah. They got the AI too. That's scary.
the AI, I know there's so much that comes with that. Okay, second to last question. Are you still foraging mushrooms? And
Oh my God, I miss my foraging days. I used to forage a lot in the East Coast. It was like my thing
okay,
to show my followers, but I don't do as much more urban foraging. So if there's orange trees or my sister's house has peaches
yeah,
so on next doors. But to be honest, like I haven't really done foraging because it's been really hot and I can't go out during hot days. But during the fall, winter, I'm
yeah,
trying to do it. I think it's just difficult with the time of year and just like everything that happens. But it is a
okay.
goal of mine to actually get back into foraging because all my followers are like, "What happened to your foraging content? I miss it." I'm like, I miss it too, but I just was like, that doesn't pay the bills, guys.
Yeah, I'm busy.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure you'll get back into it. But awesome. All right, Isaiah, tell us where my audience can find you, and yeah, well, stop recording after that.
Yeah. You can find me at Queer Brown Vegan or at queerbrownvegan.com or Isaiah Hernandez. I'm out there. Please connect and reach out if you're ever interested in chatting.
Yay! Thanks so much, Isaiah. And yeah, I'm so excited for everything that's coming out. Do you know when your book is gonna launch
Yes,
approximately?
April 2027. So it's a long time
Oh,
actually. Yeah,
damn.
it's not next
Okay,
year. Everyone,
okay.
I thought next year, I'm like, there's publishing issues.
Okay, 2027, April. That'll be like
Yeah.
my mini birthday gift. I'm looking forward to it. Awesome. Thanks so much, Isaiah, for coming on the show. I've learned a lot from you over these years of following you. So you've truly been an inspiration. And I wish you the best of luck. And I can't wait to see you start your own little family.
I know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of The Thoughtful Advocate. If this episode sparked something in you, share it, leave a review, share it with a friend, leave a review, or tag us on Instagram at The Thoughtful Advocate. As always, I'd love to hear from you if this resonated. And I'd love to hear who do you like to hear from next, whether that's a guest you've been wanting to hear their real stories from. Till next time.
Okay, so today's sponsor is Kind Laundry. Just kidding, they're not really a sponsor, but I do have an affiliate code. Kind Laundry use natural ingredients and it actually comes in these sheets. So much more useful than liquid laundry detergent because that stuff gets messy. With Kind Laundry, you can bring this anywhere. It's literally in a box, pack in your suitcase, and it's that easy. You can get 10% off by using code ZeroWasteQ.